Hello everyone and welcome to another video in this channel. Today we're going to continue with a very interesting topic that was asked by one of you guys, which is a jewelry rendering. But before we do that, I just want to remind you that we have a special promo going on where you can get all of our courses for 90% off. Hey guys, I'm here with a great deal for all of you. For the next 5 days, we're gonna be offering a 90% discount in all of our Udemy courses. 90% guys, this is the lowest we can go for our discounts, and you are going to be learning from industry veterans and experts all of the workflows, techniques, tips and tricks that you want to become a great 3D artist. We have modeling, we have rigging, we have animation, we have sculpting, we have characters, environment, creatures, a little bit of everything. You can get a 90% discount for the next 5 days if you follow the link down here. All of the courses are recorded in real time, so you're not going to miss any part of the process. They include the project files. We have a support line for questions. You can ask questions on the site and we'll be getting back to you as soon as we can. And yeah, we are also offering a free 30-day money-back policy. So if you buy the course and you don't like it, I don't think it's going to happen. If you don't like it for any reason, you get your money back within 30 days of your purchase. No questions asked. You get your money back. So if you want to learn any 3D skill and you want to start this year strong with really good skills, really good fundamentals, make sure to check the link down here. Hurry up! Remember, this offer is only going to be available for 5 days. So join us and become an amazing 3D artist in no time. There we go. Now, just to clarify, I know the video says 5, the Friday next day. It's until February 11th, okay? We just record that one video and use it a couple of days, but it's until February 11th. Also, since Udemy works in a regional basis, you might not see the full discount in certain countries or areas. That's nothing that we can't really control that. We just set we set the discount to be as high as we can. Usually 90% is the one that we get. But again, I apologize if there's any issues with the regional pricing. So today we're going to talk about rendering, and we're going to be rendering two types of objects which are really common in jewelry. We're going to be rendering gold, which is this coin that I actually made, and we're going to render this little guy, which was made by, and I'm giving proper credits here, the Diamond Age from Thingiverse. So this object, you can download it. It has a free license with Creative Commons. We talked about licenses a couple of videos ago. You might want to check that out. But yeah, let's go. So let's start with glass, because glass is usually the most tricky thing about jewelry. And we're going to start with this guy right here. So the first thing we need is, of course, a camera. So I'm going to create a camera here in rendering, camera, panels, look through selected. And this is what the camera is seeing right now. Let's find just a nice little production here. I'm gonna go and change this to a square, 1K square, so we can get a really nice framing. There we go. And a couple of settings for our renderer. We're gonna go system, change this to GPU to get a faster render, and we're ready to go. So if I were to assign a new material to this guy, Arnold, AI standard surface, we know that in order for us to make a glass, we need to bring the transmission value here on the asset all the way up. So I'm gonna bring this all the way up. Now you're not gonna see it, and that can be quite annoying. So you can use this little icon right here, which uses the default material inside of Maya, in case you have a lot of materials, and we're gonna see it. We're not gonna see it transparent, but we're gonna see it. So if we select it again, you're gonna see that the base color automatically gets turned off. And if I were to render this now, we're not gonna get absolutely anything. And the reason we're not getting absolutely anything is because we don't have any lights on our scene. So I'm going to start very simple here, because one of the things that I learned when I was researching this, because I did a couple of product renders several years ago, is that you need to keep it as simple as possible, because glass and gold and anything that's reflective is very tricky. And the reason is it will reflect anything that you have in your environment. Right now, we don't have anything. So if I add a light, let's do an area light, and let's start with a side area light, something like this. Okay, I'm gonna do it right here, and let's change the exposure to something like a 10. Okay, so if we render now, we're seeing something. We need more exposure. Let's really bring this up to 18. There we go. So as you can see, we now get something that looks really interesting. You can see the reflection, and this is very interesting with glass. You can see the reflection of the light, the shape, the actual square shape of the light reflected in several of the curvature of the object. So if you want to go for a really high contrast, really dynamic look, this is something that you can do. Now you might be wondering, well, what could we do to see a little bit more of the glass, right? Because right now it's very, very dark. And the answer is we either need more light or we need a background, okay? Backgrounds are really important. A table, a wall, a curtain, like you can use a lot of different things for backgrounds. I'm gonna use this like big shape right here. And the reason why the backgrounds are so important is because when using a renderer such as Arnold, the light will bounce from the wall and come back towards us. And that's why we're gonna be able to see this character right here. Now, of course, we need to play around with things such as the color of the background. So let's assign a new material and let's do a standard surface. And let's bring the roughness or the color down and the roughness up. We want a very like flat and matted background. Now, you might be wondering, like, what's happening here? Like, why is it still so shiny? Well, because it's very close, right? You can see the light is very close to the background. If we push the background back and we render now, the background is going to be darker. We're not changing the lights. We're playing only with the backgrounds. This is why I mentioned that this sort of things tend to be quite tricky. So we're pushing the background back. Therefore, it's farther away from the light and we get a darker tone. Instead of having to darken the color, we just push it back and we still get an image that looks really, really nice right here. I intentionally left the object without any subdivision so we can see the faceted things, which is the kind of things that you would find like on a diamond or like on a little gemstone and stuff. So yeah, now how do we solve a couple of issues? Because glass is really tricky in that it needs a couple more processing power to give you the best results. The first thing I'm seeing is the noise, and we know that we can solve our noise issues by using a denoiser. Denoiser is a perfectly valid way, as you can see, to clean up things. And I mean, you guys are living, if you're just starting 3D this year or like last year, you guys are living in a like wonderful age, because back when I started in 2011, we didn't have denoiser. You had to like really push the samples all the way up to get super clean renders. Nowadays, you can do this. Now, of course, it's going to blur things out. It's not going to look as sharp. So how can we make this look a little bit sharper? We're going to go to the settings right here. And I like to use adaptive sampling. Some people like to use like automatic samplings over here. I personally like to use adaptive samplings when using GPU. And let's go for something like a 10. I don't think we need 20 just yet. Let's do a 10. This will make the render take longer. As you can see right here, it's taking like 10 seconds. But the more it goes, you can see the sharper and the cleaner the denoiser is going to be working, the better results we're going to be having. Now, here's another technical thing that's important about glass that you need to take into account. When you have an object that has a wall, right? The rays that we shoot from the light are going to go through that wall, and this counts as one depth, okay? This will be two depths. So imagine we have a cup of wine, for instance, and we have wine inside of it. Usually we model the wine inside of the walls. It's a trick I learned from Blender Guru. And you have 1, 2, this will be 3, 4, 5, 6 layers. So you need at least 6 layers to go through all of the glass objects, and then another 6 ones to come back and get the proper reflection. Because imagine we have like a red sphere over here. We need to have enough like depth or enough power on our rays to go all the way through and come all the way back. So how do we manage that? Well, here in the render settings, down here where it says ray depth, you can see that by default we have very few, have only 8 on transmission. When I'm working with glass, I usually like to have 6 in the specular, 6 in diffuse, and at least 16 in transmission, okay? At least. And let's save this image so we can compare. And if we render now, we should see more bounces and more things going around. Let's wait for the render to finish and we'll compare. Stop. And there you go. See how we get a little bit more light overall on the scene? That's because we have more rays, or that rays have more depth, and we're being able to really go through it and then come back and gather as much information as possible. Now, another thing that we can do is we can modify some of the parameters from the glass. So for instance, right now the glass on the roughness is really rough, 0.2. Let's bring it really low to 0.02, for instance. And if we render now, the glass is going to be really, really, really freaking shiny. Look at that. Beautiful, right? Now, by default, we're using this thing called index of refraction. This is another, I mentioned this video was going to be really technical. There's a lot of like mathematical things going on. So when you have a surface and a ray hits that surface, if it's glass, this ray will bend at a specific angle, okay? And this angle right here is called the index of refraction. Every single object that we have, water, glass, air, even like certain special like gases, they will have a specific index of refraction. You can look this up on the internet to get like the exact number, but the general thing that you need to know is the higher the number is, the more bent we get. And you can have a sphere, for instance, with a really high index of refraction, and the ray pretty much bends all the way back, and you're kind of like seeing a reflection. So it's really, really interesting. Now that we can use that information to our advantage, because if we increase the index of refraction to something like a 5, this thing is gonna shine a lot, like a lot. Look at this. It looks now like a diamond. Diamonds have a really high index of refraction. I don't remember the exact number, but they have a quite high index of refraction. So since the index is so high, light is bouncing all over the place. And every time it hits another wall, another like element, it bends again and bends again and bends again. And this is the sort of effect that we generate, which, as you can see, gives us some really, really cool stuff. I will probably not go as high. I'll probably go to like a 3 or something. Which is still going to give us some really like nice shine effect. Like compare this one right here, this really, really interesting shiny effect, to this one right here, which was just glass. 1.5 is usually glass. If you lower it below 1, then you're going to have a transparent object. Like the ray is just going to go straight through it. So you usually want to keep it high. Now, other things that we can do here is we can change the color. You're going to change the color right here. So if we change the color, we can get like, I don't know, some sort of like jade, or what's not jade, what is it, like topaz or sapphire? Let's say we want a sapphire, like octopus. We can go here, and I would recommend playing around with the saturations, because as you can see, even though I'm really, really like low on saturation, we'll still have a lot of tint to the object. And you're going to find, depending on the type of stone that you want to replicate, that you're going to get slightly different results. So this is what I would do for a glass. Glass is, again, one of those things that you want to keep it simple. As you can see here, I only have one light. I'm going to show you what happens when we add a second light. So if we add a second light, one of the things that's going to happen is we're going to have way more information, and it's just going to be really messy, right? Like it's just like reflections and refractions all over the place. Now, here's another thing that I want to mention. If you guys are doing something that needs a lot of precision, you might want to change from GPU back to CPU. CPU will give you more precise elements, but of course, it's going to take a little bit longer. You even saw how my video like struggled there. So CPU is really good. It's gonna give you way more precise definition, but it's not gonna be as fast, and it's just a different process. But again, usually if you want super precise effects, CPU will give you a better result. GPU, on the other hand, it's fast and it's really good. So there you go. Now I'm gonna show you a very cool technique that you can do with the objects. This is something that I learned from some like tutorials that I saw about like glass rendering. So let's say we want a reflection of this guy. If I were to place a floor on the ground here, so that we could see like the reflection of the character on the floor, I could be like, hey, this is going to be assign a new material, Arnold. AI standard surface is going to be a dark, super glossy material, pretty much like a mirror, like a dark mirror. The problem is that the dark mirror, even though, yes, we do get some sort of like reflection right there, it's also going to catch a little bit of light. So I've seen some commercials where they do this sort of thing. Let me delete that one. Like this, right? So it does look okay, but then we're having the issue where the reflection is not as bright as the character itself. And it just becomes a little bit difficult to really appreciate it. So this is a really stupid trick, but it's really, really good. Let me show you. You just grab your object, Control D, and then Shift, or just R in this case, and we're gonna scale this on -y. And then you just place the object underneath it, like this. So now, if we render, it looks like we're reflecting this guy right here, okay? So it's very, very stupid, but it works. Like you can actually take 2 glasses of wine or 2 bottles of wine, flip one, have the other one on top, and it's gonna look like a reflection, okay? You can later on, like inside the Photoshop, we can blur this thing a little bit more, but this is gonna give you the exact like values and the exact elements. It's gonna be like a perfect mirror, which works really, really nice. So that's for glass. Now let's take a look at gold, because gold looks or works a little bit different. I'm going to hide this one real quick, and let's bring in our coin. So this is a coin that I model. I use it for, or I'm going to use it. I'm actually 3D printing it right now. I'm going to use it for games, for my games. This is going to be my hero points. So if I go here, I'm going to, of course, assign a new material. It's full of booleans. We're not going to smooth it. AI standard surface. And we're going to make gold. To make gold, you're going to bring the metalness all the way up. And then you're going to change. There's two options to do it. I'm going to do it like the artistic way. I'm just going to go to the color here and select the color. A lot of people go for this very like saturated yellow. It's actually more like a desaturated orange. It's like a very pale orange for gold. So something like that. And if we render now, let's render real quick. This is what we're going to get. Now, gold works in a very similar way to glass. You want to keep it simple. If you can avoid using HDRIs, it's usually better. And I'm going to show you real quick why. I have Polyhaven over here, or I was about to open it. And the problem is, if you go to Polyhaven and try to get an HDR to get like super realistic results, I do not, and I repeat, I do not recommend that you get any environment, because the trees, the land, the sky, all of those things are going to be projected onto your object, and that's usually not what you want. I recommend you go to the studios and you go for photographic studios, such as this one right here, this one right here. Like this is Studio Small. It's actually doing something very similar. We have a double split side of or sort of lighting. So let's get this one. And of course, I'm just gonna do it directly here. Let's save this image real quick to compare it. And then I'm gonna group this and hide the group. Let's add a new light, Skydome light. Let's assign the HDRI to this Skydome light real quick. 1 second here. There we go. And we're using the ACES workflow. We've talked about this before, which allows us to see a better representation of the image. Let's move the lights so they're like facing my coin in a very similar way to how the other ones were doing it. And now if we render, you're gonna see, even though we have a very similar like setup, it's slightly different. Like the type of colors and the type of like contrast that we get is slightly different because we're reflecting the outer edges, right? Like the outer image. So HDRIs are fine. However, I personally recommend using them and then lowering the exposure to something like a -4. Why -4? Because -4 will still give you some interesting highlights without actually like making the reflection super obvious. And then on top of this, you can add things such as this guys right here, the lights that we had before, and now we're combining them. So you can see we get a little bit of an extra punch right there. Again, usually for jewelry, you want contrast. That's like the name of the game in this case. So for instance, I can go for a side view here. I'm actually gonna go for like a top view right here. Now let's see how this looks. There you go. So now this looks like a more interesting metal. Usually, again, when we're seeing jewelry, you want contrasty renders. However, there's other options when you go for really light and very bright jewelry, but you're not gonna get as much shine on those. And yeah, that's pretty much it, guys. Like using these techniques that I just showed you, the mirror technique and stuff, you can get some really interesting compositions. I'm gonna do a quick composition here for the thumbnail. Probably something I always do the thumbnails afterwards, and some people have told me, it's like, how do you do those thumbnails? It's just using the same thing that I just teach you, but making it look a little bit nicer. So let's go for a composition like this. I'm gonna have one coin on this side, and then let's look at the other side right there. We try to find a nice framing, and there we go. Now, remember that this image is a, what's the word? It's a transparent image, so I could use Photoshop to add a background later on. But in this case, I think it might be a good idea to add a background like what we did. So very quickly, let's just add one plane right here. 90 degrees rotation. Push it back, make it really big. Assign a new material, Arnold. AI standard. Let's just bring this down, up there. That's a little bit better. Probably a little bit lighter. Something like that. There we go. So sometimes YouTube makes things look way too dark. So yeah, that's it, guys. Thank you very much for hanging out for this 20 minutes. Tomorrow we'll have our final video of the week, which is going to be just like another technique. If you want any specific things, let me know in the comments. I always have things planned, but if there's a question, I always like to address it as well. This weekend, super huge portfolio review. We have so many submissions this time. It's like 40 submissions or something. So I'm going to see if we're going to be able to cover all of them this weekend. If not, we're probably going to have a couple this weekend and a couple next weekend, because believe me, guys, it's a lot. If you haven't submitted, you can still submit. Down here, there's going to be a link for your portfolio. And yeah, that's pretty much it, guys. Thank you very much for your time. I would appreciate a like, a share, a subscription. We want to get to the next milestone, which right now, the short-term milestone is 35,000 subscribers. So let's get there as quick as possible so that we can keep on going. Thank you very much, guys. I'll see you back on the next one. Bye-bye.